Two topics for today. Actually, did some thinking about it instead of sitting here and suddenly, headlighting you and wondering what I'm about to talk about. So, at the risk of a little lack of spontaneity, and I just noticed something. Look at that. I, I'm asymmetrical in my little seat here. There, red blanket on. Well, we see today as an anniversary. We being, editorial, authorial, tapeworm, perhaps, who knows? But me and somebody see this as an anniversary moment. There are two things. One is quite trivial, which is that this is week 51 of the Friday Live features, which means next week means a year of doing this weekly and wondering what on earth for, except that I have rather enjoyed them. And I kind of like the connections that this has formed. A few people out there in Facebook land seem to like this, and I'm enjoying it too. So for no other reason, it sees fit to continue. But let's talk a little bit about what that means. It means what is my relationship to YouTube and Facebook as a person speaking into a camera, and basically infecting the internet with selfness. And I bring this up because very rarely do I post feels, say, on Facebook. Okay, I should explain. Why am I even on Facebook? I'm on Facebook because it's the only game in town for dealing with Swedish role playing as a culture and a business. And if that were not the case, if there were some other venue that the different companies and the different organizations and clubs used, then I would have closed down myself on Facebook a couple of years ago. And when I found out that this was the case, I sighed and said, "All right, I guess I'm still on the booger because I have to be." But as it stands, that means that I do maintain some ties there with friends and family, some from quite some time ago, which I like. And I seem to be relatively free of all the weird algorithms and things like that. I mean, whoever it is they think I am, they're targeting quite effectively with their ads, and I'm kind of puzzledly looking at the ads, going, "Really?" But, anyways, what I don't typically do is say, I feel glad today because I'm sad, or I'm sad today because I'm mad, or other complicated things. I have some friends who sort of scare me in this regard. Now, granted, I understand in a lot of cases, at least one friend, suffers from chronic pain, and talking about their state of mind, their state of body, and so on is something that they share as a matter of course, and I get that. And then there are more casual versions of it, which are basically kind of mood, or as I say, sort of the feels check in, and I tend not to be very sympathetic, or at least I'm neutral in terms of how much I care. Um, Oh, and there's been a couple of other cases that are grim enough, or substantive enough for me to care. Another friend of mine, went through the prolonged death of their long-term partner, and saw fit to say, okay, among a certain set of friends, I'm going to be, sharing out my process as we go. And the person, I think, maintained certain boundaries, which I respected, but also, kept us informed. And it was a little bit brutal and a little bit close. And you'll see me punching the care button, the way one should, I think. But I'm really, a little squicked by, feeling down today, feeling up today, and I'm supposed to be hitting the click buttons and stuff like that. Well, I bring all this up because twice now in the last year or two, I've posted a few songs just their names and the artists and the year and the album necessarily, I suppose, because I'm very particular about which version of a song that I may be talking about or thinking about or having just listened to. And a while ago was a set of songs that were kind of groovy of a particular period, and it was fun to post them. I just, titled it, In a Mood, and listen in order, listed the songs. Now, not too long ago, I did the same again, and this time they were dark, right? I mean, they weren't exactly obscure. They were, well-known songs, beginning with Warren Zevon's "Desperados Under the Eaves," The Doors, Riders on the Storm was in there. Anyway, it was grumpy. It was a dark and stormy, perfectly adolescent, and yet perfectly, in some cases, middle-aged, gloomy reflection upon, the dark among us, in us all. Well, anyway, something about the meaning of the word mood for me is important. I mean, these things come, they go, they pass, and whatever, and none of them are, what's the word I want? Actionable, right? We're not talking about actionable emotions, things that I'm going to be acting upon, or things that I consider major transitions in life, or anything that is, requires help or even attention, really. It's hard to say, why would you post, something on there unless you're looking for attention? And the answer is, well, I don't know. I mean, imagine what it's like to do that and not be posting for attention. And that's your answer. And, there are degrees of connection you're making with people, certainly. Anyway, people, I think, properly from the standpoint of social media culture, asked, are you all right? And so a couple of tentative replies or a couple of tentative messages, sort of the, if you don't feel good about things, I'm here, stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, that wasn't really the messaging I was out for. As I say, I mean, if I'm feeling a certain way that I consider actionable, then either I'm going to I will have done it already, or I will have done whatever in real life is required to cope with those feelings. And so that's not the venue I would go to for these things. It's hard to talk about this without all sorts of judgments being, laid down on everybody out there who just posted their feels this morning again, and now they're thinking, oh, Ron thinks I'm a dork. I don't know. Think what you think. I think anytime you want, and the world will still turn. What I mean is that I dialed down my emotional investment in social media to an extent that's extraordinarily difficult to convey. A while ago, I reluctantly stopped posting to the birthday posts, the automatic birthdays. And I feel bad about that, because the fact is, when I was happy birthdaying people, they would happy birthday me back. And for, 2 or 3 years there, I really liked it on my birthday when all these people were, commenting and saying happy birthday and everything. And I really liked it. And I kind of liked the connection sometimes you would get when somebody that you hadn't heard of or seen, for some reason, I think the algorithm shows that up more than other things. And so people, will post, and you haven't actually had a comment from them for ages and ages, and you always wondered why. And of course they weren't seeing your posts, blah, blah, blah. We know. But this was sort of an opportunity for that to kick in again. So anyway, I liked it, but I know a lot of people. I'm like, I got all these Facebook friends from 10,000 different walks of life. And that's a lot of birthdays. I mean, there's only 365 in the year. And that means everybody piles up on any given day. People are all piled up. And if I really felt happy birthday like, then I would be punching that in, a lot, almost every day. And I would have to say every single day of the year and a lot on a lot of the days. And I just suddenly realized I was being this Facebook, puppet of button punching, and I just couldn't hack it anymore. And then things got weird once in a while. I figured it's kind of dumb to write, happy birthday on the obviously it's so-and-so's birthday post. So sometimes I would just say, hi, or something like that. And then people got weird. They were like, why did you say hi instead of happy birthday? What does that mean? And I was like, oh, okay, this is just all so loaded, evidently, that I'm out. And I feel, a birthday notification comes up and I'm like, oh, I like that person. And I kind of don't. So that kind of gives you an example of my reluctance to get into, deep and meaningful feels on social media, because I don't want to. When I'm posting a mood, it's a mood, right? And music's cool. Music, awesome. If I want to sort of indulge a mood musically, then maybe I want to share that about. Anyone who likes it, goes, listens to the songs and goes, oh, wow, what a mood. So there's your thought on Friday Lives, because, I'm not going to be asking for help on a Friday Live. I may need help. There's a long list of people who think I need help in one fashion or another. Some of them fairly permanent versions thereof. Or as they might put it, it would make me happy, right? Well, anyway, the point is that that's all attended to, right? Should I need it? Should I want it? Should I not want it, but need it? Should I act upon some need badly, or well, or whatever? Not really anyone else's problem as far as social media is concerned. And I like doing these Friday Lives, trying to stay authentic in them, insofar as that's even a smidgen of that is possible, because I'm kind of doubt it is, unfortunately. Do my best. And when that happens, when I do that, well, let's connect. I like to connect. But it's not, a cry for help. Those are good things, cries for help. Especially if they're like in the real world, right? Instead of just flung out there, among the cat photos and the ads for who knows what. Seriously, who knows what? I mean, I think we should all make up the person that the algorithm thinks you are, and those can be characters in a story. That's a cool idea. All right. I said 2 anniversaries. It's the other anniversary, which does apply to lots and lots of people besides myself. And significantly, it doesn't apply to everybody. There are some people for whom this anniversary came a couple of months ago. But for me, this is really almost exactly to the day when it kicked in that our lives must change due to the COVID-19 pandemic. That we have to change the way we act, we have to change the way we dress, we have to change the way we, mask ourselves, and we have to change our tactics and strategies regarding our parenting and schools. And especially in this country, which did not ever quite have anything that you would think of as a lockdown. No, people with high school age kids will probably disagree, because their kids were out of school forever and ever and ever. But with my younger kids, that wasn't the case. And the restrictions on work and travel and gatherings here in Sweden have been, globally speaking, extremely light. I even began these Friday Lives by talking about this. So it makes sense that it would be this year. So at a year's time, what am I thinking? Well, I'm sad to say that I'm going to say something extremely similar to what I opened with a year ago, because today especially, it's kind of pissing me off. Granted, when I went into the big grocery store yesterday to go get some things, I would say about 20% maximum of the people there and none of the employees were wearing masks. And that's a high point. I mean, anywhere I go here in Sweden, publicly, 20% of the people maximum. And I believe, if my little ears are accurate, that recent reports about, wow, the mask doesn't do anything that social distancing doesn't do, is really prevalent here. And those reports, incidentally, had to do with rates of personal infection, whether you catch it, whether you're wearing the mask or not, relative to how you're social distancing. And the efficacy of those studies is all under debate all the time. But the fact is that wearing the mask does not in and of itself provide, spaceman immunity and spaceman spaceman prevention. It is definitely not analogous to the famous condom in terms of preventing pregnancy. So this has led a lot of people to say, well, to hell with it. It was all a big scaremonger, and we don't need the mask part. We'll just do the distancing part, insofar as we feel like it, and how convenient it is when I go in and out of that doorway. And here's the point, which I have tried to make multiple times, and which I'm having a very hard time making here in Sweden. There are aspects of life in Sweden that actually ended up being pretty resistant to this point, and a surprising and unfortunate difficulty of getting it across, which I'll try to articulate. Okay, here's the point, which is that virus is harbored in cellular material, in fluid, this particular one. And so therefore, when fluid from your body is sprayed about, then there are, flotsam and jetsam of your cells, which have virus in them potentially. And that's what can get, into someone else's breathing in, and, they then are exposed. This can happen if you are not only not sick, but aren't going to get sick. Let's say that you are a person who stereotypically, has this amazing immune system, which you don't, incidentally, but let's say you did, and you are, as it happens, therefore transformed into a spewer of these infectious units. You are not, the good one. The big mythology here in particular is that, well, I'm healthy. And if I'm healthy, then that means what I'm spewing out about me in this fog of exhaled vapor is fine because I'm healthy and what I'm spewing is healthy, which is incorrect. If you aren't currently affected, perhaps you've been exposed and it's just not going to take this particular time, which is statistical, and it's not, that doesn't stop you from spraying it around on everybody. So your sickitude, either a little or a lot or none, is irrelevant. We are talking about the rate at which you are contributing to transmission. Think of transmission collectively across the population, the extent to which these fluid particles are basically sneezed on each other or exhaled upon each other and breathed in collectively across the population. Okay, by the way, that's a lot. If we have non-pandemic circumstances, we're all breathing each other's, watery exudate all the time. Togetherness, isn't it great? So that's happening. And as any culture who has dealt with a pandemic for real knows, the first and foremost thing you can do as a population is to drop that rate of transmission. And I mean seriously drop it. And then whoever is specifically infecting whom or whatever drops just collectively across the group. And that's what a mask does. That's precisely what it does. When you look at those numbers, masking in the conditions of a pandemic, especially one that is spread the way we're talking about, is immensely effective. It also has the benefit of having super spreader locations or events be much, much more identifiable because you have dropped the level of noise in the data way down, so that when you actually see a spike or a wave or whatever, it can be located, and it can be located in space. That's literally what it means, but it can also be located in terms of time, and therefore tracing and testing becomes incredibly viable. I mean, incredibly informative, and specific moments and approaches or connectors of transmission that could be happening over and over again can be identified, and that behavior or that particular geography or whatever can be dealt with as policy. But bringing down that level of collective transmission and exposure is critical, because first of all everything good follows from there in terms of people actually getting sick, but also it means that policy about the pandemic now can work with much more signal rich data. What really frustrates me, I've talked about this a little bit before, is that when it comes to driving, Swedes rock. Okay, it is just, I love driving here so much. And the reason is that the same logic applies. Everybody is taught and everybody is educated, and they are, but seriously enforced, right, that you are driving to keep everyone else safe. That if your logic while you're driving is, well, I'll just keep myself safe, then that's on me. I'll keep myself safe, and I'll stay alert, and I'll, have good reactions, and I'll know how to work my car and follow the rules myself, perhaps, or if I feel like it. But if I don't feel like it, I don't have to. So my point here is to, just, it's on me. And if I'm in an accident, well, it's on me because I didn't keep myself safe. That attitude is not found here in Sweden when it comes to driving. It is precisely the opposite. You are taught you are driving in order to keep everyone else safe. There is nothing you do ever that reduces that safety margin, period. To the extent that there is a legal limit for alcohol, blood alcohol in Sweden, but if you do a dumb thing and the cop pulls you over and there is an alcohol reading but it's below the legal limit, you're still liable. It must have contributed, period. It just did. And that's how the law looks at it. And, but I'm under the legal limit. Screw you. And the penalties are severe. I mean, okay, 3 years without your license, and then you're eligible after an interview and after a super double check on yourself for all kinds of things to apply for a license again. I mean, it's a big, they don't do DUIs here in Sweden, okay? Not the way that it happens in the States. I'm driving on my DUI, no, you're not. Okay, so here, by the way, are my beloved and fellow, and welcoming, generally, Swedish neighbors and friends and family and everything, are they, humble about Sweden's driving safety and stuff like that? They are not. They are proud, and arguably rightfully so. They are proud not only of the results of the incredibly low, casualty rate and accident rate and everything, And they are proud of the value system that represents. And the comparison to the sort of, well, I'll protect myself attitude is definitely one of, how could anybody be so dumb as to think that? Who would want to live in a society where people drive like that? Keep that in mind, the association of values with this policy. And it's the very same people, friends, family, neighbors, etc., who are doing this thing about, well, it's about protecting myself. Doesn't protect myself, so, to hell with it. Really? After I just said all that about the, the exposure and the transmission and the collective, this and that, which uses exactly the same logic and is extraordinarily validated through all the data for, well over a century of all these modern pandemics, using exactly the same logic as the business of, you are not wearing that mask to keep yourself safe. You are wearing that mask because collectively, when we do it, everybody is safer. Same logic. What's the difference? Sad to say, a history of enforcement. People in Sweden did not internalize the values of driving this way, except through the process of being subjected to stern, and I mean seriously stern, enforcement of the requisite behaviors. And of course, one can say, well, is it like the dictatorship of the proletariat? Once everybody has the values, do we just, we can let the enforcement, the sternness of the enforcement just wither away? Is that how it will be? No. Those enforcements remain in place and they're not going anywhere. So is that a sad lesson on all of us, that these, these laudable values, these rather admirable values, for which I forgive any pride is involved, because if you can be proud of it all you want to, as long as you're freaking doing it while I'm on the road, are they only going to become in place as values? Not on the logic of their argument, not on the benefit of their application, not on any kind of, and society is getting better and better, right? Every day in every way, our society is getting better and better. Just repeat that, a lot. Is that how it works? And the answer is no, evidently not. Evidently, we are talking about law enforcement. And I'm coming to the conclusion after a year that, I would like some draconian equivalent to the driving penalties and standards to apply to wearing a mask here in Sweden. Yep, you heard it. I want that. So that's where I am 1 year into my experience of the pandemic, where I'm living. So, 2 little anniversaries. Hope you enjoyed it. Wonder who I pissed off with this one. Take care.